Stranded on a hostile world. The twin suns of Nexus 9 cast an eerie purple glow across the barren landscape as Zara stumbled forward, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The young Florian botanist had never imagined she'd find herself in such a nightmarish situation. Just days ago, she had been aboard the research vessel Celestial Bloom, eagerly anticipating the exploration of this newly discovered planet's unique flora. Now she was alone, abandoned, and fighting for survival in a world that seemed intent on destroying her. Zara's delicate green skin, usually shimmering with bioluminescent patterns, was dull and covered in a fine layer of reddish dust. Her large, almond-shaped eyes darted nervously from side to side, scanning the alien terrain for any sign of shelter or resources. The ship had left her behind during an emergency evacuation, her cryopod malfunctioning and failing to wake her in time. By the time she'd emerged, groggy and disoriented, the Celestial Bloom was nothing more than a fading speck in the violet sky. A distant screech echoed across the rocky plains, sending a shiver down Zora's spine. She'd already encountered some of Nexus 9's native fauna, and the experience had left her with a deep gash on her left arm and a healthy dose of terror. The creatures here were unlike anything in the Florian database, all razor-sharp claws, gnashing teeth, and an insatiable hunger that seemed to drive them into a frenzy at the merest scent of prey. As she crested a small hill, Zora's heart sank. The landscape before her was a vast expanse of jagged rocks and sparse, twisted vegetation that looked more like petrified tentacles than plants. In the distance, ominous storm clouds gathered, flashes of crimson lightning illuminating their depths. She had to find shelter, and fast. Zara's scientific mind, honed by years of study and field research, kicked into overdrive. She began cataloging her surroundings, searching for anything that might aid in her survival. The twisted plants, while unsettling in appearance, might provide some form of sustenance or useful fibers. The rocks, if she could find the right type, could potentially be fashioned into crude tools. As she made her way down the hill, a glint of something metallic caught her eye. Hope surged through her as she quickened her pace, her three-toed feet finding purchase on the loose gravel. As she drew closer, the object revealed itself to be a small cylindrical device half buried in the rust-colored soil. It was unmistakably of Florian design, a portable atmospheric analyzer that must have been dropped during the hasty evacuation. Zara's slender fingers trembled as she brushed away the dirt and activated the device. It hummed to life, its holographic display flickering weakly. The readings it displayed made her heart sink once more. The atmosphere, while breathable, contained trace elements that would become toxic to her physiology with prolonged exposure. She had perhaps a week, maybe two, before the air itself would begin to poison her. A low growl from behind sent Zara whirling around, the analyzer clutched tightly to her chest. No more than 20 meters away stood a creature that haunted her nightmares. It was roughly the size of a Florian transport vehicle, with a body that seemed to be a hideous fusion of insectoid and reptilian features. Multiple compound eyes fixed on her, and mandibles clicked in apparent anticipation of a meal. Zara's mind raced. She knew she couldn't outrun the creature, and her slender frame stood no chance in physical combat. As the beast took a step forward, the ground beneath its clawed feet sizzled and smoked. Acid, Zara realized. Its blood or saliva must be highly corrosive. In a moment of desperate inspiration, Zara glanced at the atmospheric analyzer in her hands. It contained a small power cell, not enough to serve as a weapon, but perhaps. As the creature charged, Zara summoned every ounce of her strength and hurled the device directly at its face. The analyzer shattered against the beast's armored hide, but the exposed power cell reacted violently with the creature's acidic secretions. A small explosion erupted, temporarily blinding and disorienting the monster. Seizing her chance, Zara sprinted past the thrashing creature, her heart pounding in her chest. She ran without direction, driven purely by the instinct to survive. As she ran, the storm she'd seen earlier rolled in with frightening speed. The air crackled with energy, and the first drops of rain hissed as they hit the ground, leaving small pockmarks in the soil. Acidic rain. Of course, Zara thought bitterly. Why not add that to the list of things trying to kill her? Through the curtain of lethal precipitation, Zara spotted a dark opening in a nearby cliff face. A cave. It wasn't ideal. Who knew what might be lurking inside? But it was her only option as the acid rain intensified. Ducking into the cave entrance, Zara collapsed against the cool stone wall, her breath coming in ragged gasps. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, she realized the cave was deeper than she'd initially thought. Strange, bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, casting a soft, ethereal glow throughout the cavern. For the moment, at least, she was safe from the deadly rain and the voracious predators outside. But Zara knew this was only a temporary reprieve. She was stranded on a world that seemed designed to eliminate her, with a toxic atmosphere slowly poisoning her with each breath. Her people believed her dead, and she had no way to signal for help. As she huddled in the cave, listening to the hiss of acid rain outside, Zara made a promise to herself. She would survive. She would find a way off this planet, and someday, somehow, she would make it back home. Little did Zara know that her true adventure was only beginning, and that help would come from the most unexpected of sources, a species that her people had long dismissed as primitive and unpredictable. Humans. An unexpected encounter. The steady drip of water echoed through the cavern, a rhythmic counterpoint to Zara's labored breathing. She had lost track of how long she'd been in this cave, her once precise internal clock thrown off by the stress of survival and the alien day-night cycle of Nexus 9. The bioluminescent fungi that lined the walls provided just enough light for her to see, casting everything in an eerie blue-green glow. Zara had made the cave her temporary home, venturing out only when absolutely necessary to scavenge for food and water. Each expedition was a dance with death, dodging acid rain and evading the planet's monstrous predators. Her botanical knowledge had proven invaluable, allowing her to identify which of the twisted plant-like organisms were safe to consume. Still, she knew it was only a matter of time before her luck ran out or the toxic atmosphere took its toll. As she huddled near the cave entrance, absently braiding fibrous strands from a local plant into a crude rope, a sound caught her attention. It was faint at first, barely discernible from the wind that howled across the barren landscape. But as it grew louder, Zara's heart began to race. It was a sound she had never heard on this world before, a steady, mechanical thrum that seemed to come from the sky. Cautiously, she peered out of the cave. The violet sky was clear for once, the twin suns beating down mercilessly on the rust-colored terrain. And there, descending through the atmosphere, was a sight that made Zara's breath catch in her throat. A ship. But not a Florian ship, nor any design she recognized from her studies of spacefaring races. The vessel was small, clearly designed for a single pilot or a very small crew. Its hull was sleek and angular, with odd protrusions that Zara guessed were weapons or scientific instruments. As it drew closer, she could make out scorch marks and dents on its surface, evidence of a difficult journey. The ship touched down about half a kilometer from her cave, kicking up a cloud of reddish dust. Zara's mind raced. Should she approach? Hide? Try to signal for help? The decision was taken out of her hands when the ship's hatch opened with a hiss of escaping air, and a figure emerged. Even from this distance, Zara could tell the newcomer wasn't Florian. The being was bulkier, moving with a kind of purposeful grace that spoke of strength and confidence. As it began to survey its surroundings, Zara's scientific curiosity overcame her caution. She had to get a closer look. Moving with the stealth she'd developed over her time on Nexus 9, Zara crept closer to the landed ship. As she drew near, hidden behind a large boulder, she finally got a clear view of the alien visitor. Her eyes widened in shock and disbelief. It was a human. Zara had learned about humans during her xenobiology studies, but she'd never seen one in person. They were a relatively young spacefaring race, not yet invited to join the Galactic Concord. The Florian elders often dismissed them as primitive and dangerously unpredictable. But as Zara watched the human move about with practiced efficiency, setting up what looked like atmospheric sampling equipment, she saw nothing primitive about him. The human was male, as far as Zara could tell, with skin the color of the pale sand found near Florian oceans. He wore a sleek environmental suit that seemed far more advanced than anything she'd seen before, with a helmet that retracted into a collar around his neck. His movements were quick and precise as he worked, seemingly unperturbed by the harsh conditions around him. Zara was so engrossed in her observations that she didn't notice the shifting of loose rocks beneath her feet. A small avalanche of pebbles clattered down the slope, and the human's head snapped up, his hand instantly moving to a weapon at his hip. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice carrying clearly across the barren landscape. "Show yourself." Zara froze, her heart's pounding. She could run, try to make it back to her cave, but something told her this might be her only chance at rescue, if the human didn't shoot her on sight. Slowly, she stood, raising her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Please," she said, her translator implant converting her words to the human language. "I mean you no harm. I'm stranded here and in need of help." The human's eyes widened as he took in her alien appearance, but to Zora's surprise, he didn't raise his weapon. Instead, a look of concern crossed his face. "Are you all right?" he asked, taking a cautious step forward. "Are you hurt?" The genuine worry in his voice caught Zara off guard. This was not the reaction she had expected from a supposedly primitive and aggressive species. "I'm surviving," Zara replied, slowly lowering her hands. "My name is Zara. I'm a Florian botanist. My research vessel abandoned me here during an emergency evacuation." The human nodded, holstering his weapon. "Jack Harper," he said, introducing himself. "Independent explorer and xenobiologist. I picked up some odd readings from this planet and came to investigate." He paused, looking her over with a critical eye. "How long have you been here?" "I'm not sure," Zara admitted. "The days blur together, long enough that the atmosphere is starting to affect me." Jack frowned, reaching for a device on his belt. He tapped a few commands, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing a complex array of atmospheric data. "Damn," he muttered. "This air's a cocktail of nasty stuff. It's a wonder you've survived this long." He looked back at Zara, determination setting his jaw. "We need to get you to my ship. I've got medical supplies and a decontamination chamber that should help." Zara hesitated. Everything she'd been taught about humans told her not to trust them. But as another fit of coughing racked her body, she realized she had little choice. This human, Jack, was her best hope for survival. As they made their way to his ship, Jack kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. "This place is a death trap," he commented. "I've seen some harsh worlds, but Nexus 9 takes the cake. How have you managed to stay alive?" Zara managed a weak smile. "Botanical knowledge and sheer stubbornness," she replied. "There's a cave system not far from here. I've been using it for shelter." Jack nodded approvingly. "Smart. We'll need to grab any supplies you've got there. No telling how long we'll be stuck on this rock." Zara stopped short. You're not leaving." Jack shook his head, a wry grin on his face. "My ship took some damage breaking through the upper atmosphere. Nothing critical, but I'll need to make repairs before we can safely leave the planet." He looked at her, his expression softening. "Besides, I'm not about to leave you here alone. We humans have a saying, no one gets left behind." As they reached Jack's ship, Zara felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since she'd been stranded. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but somehow, having this strange human by her side made them seem less daunting. Little did either of them know that their unexpected encounter was just the beginning of an adventure that would challenge everything they thought they knew about each other's species and about the mysterious planet that had brought them together. Unraveling the planet's secrets. The interior of Jack's ship was a stark contrast to the hostile world outside. Clean lines and softly glowing panels created an atmosphere of efficiency and safety that Zara found instantly comforting. As Jack helped her into the decontamination chamber, she marveled at the advanced technology surrounding her. It was leagues beyond what she had expected from a human vessel. "This might tingle a bit," Jack warned as he activated the chamber. A fine mist enveloped Zara, and she felt a warm sensation wash over her skin. When the process was complete, she already felt better than she had in days. Jack ran a medical scanner over her, frowning at the results. "You're not out of the woods yet," he said, reaching for a small device. "This should help counteract the toxins you've been exposed to. It's calibrated for human physiology, but I've made some adjustments based on the Florian medical data in my database." As the antidote worked its way through her system, Zara felt her strength returning. She looked at Jack with newfound respect. "Thank you," she said softly. I must admit, I had some preconceptions about humans. You've proven them wrong at every turn." Jack chuckled, running a hand through his short, dark hair. "Yeah, we tend to surprise people. Listen, I need to start on those repairs. Why don't we get some rest? There's a spare bunk in the back." Zara nodded gratefully, but as she made her way to the sleeping quarters, her scientific curiosity got the better of her. "Jack," she called, "I've been on this planet for a while now. I've seen things, strange things. What exactly brought you here?" Jack's expression turned serious. "Anomalous readings," he said. "Energy signatures unlike anything I've ever seen, and hints of structures that don't match any known civilization." He paused, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "I think there's more to Nexus 9 than meets the eye." Zara's fatigue evaporated at his words. "I've seen odd formations in the cave systems," she said eagerly. "Patterns that seemed too regular to be natural. But I couldn't be sure." Jack grinned. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow, we start exploring properly." The next morning, or what passed for morning on Nexus 9, found Jack and Zara gearing up for their expedition. Jack had provided Zara with a spare environmental suit, modified to fit her slender Florian frame. "It'll protect you from the atmospheric toxins and most physical threats," Jack explained as he helped her adjust the suit. "The helmet's got a heads-up display that'll give you real-time data on your surroundings. Oh, and it can interface with your translator implant, so we'll be able to communicate clearly." As they set out from the ship, Zara was struck by how different the landscape looked through the suit's advanced optics. Details she had missed before now stood out in sharp relief. The twisted, tentacle-like vegetation seemed to pulse with an inner energy, and the very rocks beneath their feet showed traces of complex mineral structures. Jack led the way, his scanner sweeping the area constantly. "There," he said suddenly, pointing to a narrow ravine. "I'm picking up those energy signatures again. They're coming from underground." They made their way carefully down the ravine, the walls pressing in close on either side. At the bottom, partially hidden by millennia of erosion, was an opening that was unmistakably artificial. Perfect geometric shapes were carved into the rock, forming intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they looked at them. "Incredible," Zara breathed, her botanical expertise momentarily forgotten in the face of this archaeological wonder. "Who could have built this?" Jack shook his head, running his hand over the symbols. "No idea. But it predates any known civilization in this sector of the galaxy. Maybe any known civilization, period." As they stepped into the opening, lights flickered to life along the walls, responding to their presence. The passage led deep into the planet, spiraling down in a gentle slope. The air grew warmer as they descended, and strange, crystalline formations began to appear, jutting out from the walls and ceiling. "Jack," Zara said, her voice filled with awe. "These crystals, they're alive. Or at least they were. Look at the cellular structure." Jack examined the crystals closely, his scanner whirring. "You're right," he said, excitement clear in his voice. "There's some kind of silicon-based life form. but on a scale I'd never seen before. It's like the entire planet is one giant, interconnected organism. As they pressed deeper into the complex, the passages opened up into a vast chamber. At its center stood a towering structure that defied description. It was part machine, part crystal, and part something entirely alien. Pulses of energy rippled through it in mesmerizing patterns. "This is it," Jack said, his voice hushed. "This is what's been powering those energy signatures. But what is it? A power source? A computer? A life form?" Zara approached the structure cautiously, her scientific mind racing to categorize what she was seeing. As she neared it, tendrils of energy reached out, as if sensing her presence. Suddenly, a beam of light engulfed her, and Zara felt a rush of information flood her mind. Images flashed before her eyes. A civilization of crystalline beings, their technology integrated seamlessly with the living planet. She saw their rise, their achievements, and then their fall. A cataclysm that forced them to retreat deep underground, to sleep and wait for the day their world would be habitable again. The light faded, and Zara stumbled back, overwhelmed. Jack caught her, concern etched on his face. "Zara, are you all right? What happened?" As Zara explained what she had seen, Jack's eyes widened. "They're still here," he said, realization dawning. "The original inhabitants of this planet. They're in some kind of stasis, waiting to be reawakened." A low rumble shook the chamber, and the crystalline structure began to pulse with increasing intensity. Jack's scanner beeped urgently. "Oh," he muttered. "I think we might have triggered something. We need to get out of here now." As they raced back through the tunnels, the entire complex came to life around them. Crystals grew and shifted, blocking passages and opening new ones. It was as if the planet itself was waking up, rearranging its insides in preparation for something monumental. They burst out of the entrance just as a massive tremor shook the ground. Cracks appeared in the planet's surface, spreading out in all directions. From these fissures, a soft, bluish light began to emanate, growing stronger by the second. Jack and Zara watched in awe as the very landscape of Nexus 9 began to transform. The hostile, barren world they had known was being reshaped before their eyes into something new and wondrous. "We did it," Zara said, her voice filled with wonder. "We woke them up. We're witnessing the rebirth of an entire civilization." Jack nodded, a mix of excitement and trepidation on his face. "Yeah, and something tells me the galaxy is about to get a whole lot more interesting." He looked at Zara, a grin spreading across his face. Not bad for a human and a Florian who weren't even supposed to meet, huh? As the light engulfed the planet, Jack and Zara stood side by side, two unlikely allies bound by their shared adventure and the monumental discovery they had just made. The secrets of Nexus 9 were only beginning to unravel, and they knew their journey was far from over. The looming threat, the transformation of Nexus 9, was a sight unlike anything Jack or Zara had ever witnessed. The barren, rust-colored landscape was giving way to a world of crystalline structures and pulsing energy fields. It was beautiful, awe-inspiring, and terrifying all at once. As they made their way back to Jack's ship, carefully navigating the ever-changing terrain, Zara couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. "Jack," she said, her voice tight with concern, "I don't think this planet is stable. The energy readings are off the charts." Jack nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the scanner in his hand. "You're right. The awakening of the crystal beings is causing massive geological upheaval. We need to get off this rock, and fast." They reached the ship just as another tremor shook the ground, nearly knocking them off their feet. Jack rushed to the control panel, his fingers flying over the holographic display. "Damn it," he muttered. "The damage from our landing was worse than I thought. We're not going anywhere without some serious repairs." Zara peered over his shoulder at the diagnostics, her heart sinking. "How long?" Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Zara had come to recognize as a sign of his frustration. "Under normal circumstances. A day, maybe two. but with the planet falling apart around us. He shook his head. We don't have that kind of time. As if to emphasize his point, a massive crystal spire erupted from the ground not 50 meters from the ship, sending shockwaves through the air. The sky, once a constant violet, was now a swirling maelstrom of colors, energy discharges arcing between the newly formed crystalline structures. We need to think outside the box, Jack said, pacing the small confines of the ship's cockpit. The crystal being's technology. If we could harness it somehow, maybe we could boost our power systems enough to get off-world. Zara's eyes lit up. The chamber we found. The central structure. It was like a massive power source. If we could interface with it. It's risky, Jack warned. We barely understand how it works. One wrong move, and we could fry every system on the ship. Do we have a choice? Zara countered. Jack grinned, a hint of that human recklessness Zora had heard so much about shining through. I guess not. Let's do it. They gathered what equipment they could carry and set out once more into the chaos of the transforming world. The journey back to the underground chamber was treacherous. The once solid ground now shifted unpredictably, new crystal formations sprouting up at random intervals. More than once, they had to backtrack and find new routes as their path was blocked by sudden geological changes. As they neared the ravine that led to the chamber entrance, a bone-chilling screech filled the air. Jack and Zara froze, exchanging worried glances. Please tell me that was just the wind, Zara said, knowing full well it wasn't. Jack shook his head, his hand moving to the weapon at his hip. The planet's transformation must have awakened more than just the crystal beings. Stay close. They pressed on, moving as quickly and quietly as they could. But as they reached the entrance to the underground complex, they saw it, a creature unlike anything they had encountered before. It was massive, easily the size of Jack's ship, with a body that seemed to be a horrifying fusion of organic matter and living crystal. Multiple limbs, each ending in wickedly sharp crystalline claws, propelled it across the landscape with frightening speed. Run, Jack yelled, grabbing Zora's hand and pulling her towards the entrance. They dove into the passageway just as one of the creature's limbs smashed into the rock face above them, sending a shower of debris raining down. They didn't stop running until they were deep within the complex, the sounds of the monster's fury fading behind them. As they paused to catch their breath, Zora leaned against the wall, her legs shaking. What was that thing? Jack shook his head, his face pale even in the blue glow of the crystalline walls. I don't know. Some kind of guardian, maybe, or a byproduct of the planet's transformation. Either way, it's not making our job any easier. They pressed on, making their way back to the central chamber. The structure at its heart was pulsing with even more intensity now, the energy patterns shifting and swirling in complex patterns. Okay, Jack said, pulling out a device from his pack. This is a universal adapter I've been working on. In theory, it should allow us to interface with alien tech and convert the energy output into something our ship can use. Zara watched nervously as Jack approached the structure, the adapter held out in front of him. As he neared, tendrils of energy reached out, probing the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a surge of power that made the air crackle, the adapter lit up, energy flowing into it in a steady stream. It's working, Jack exclaimed, a triumphant grin on his face, but his celebration was short-lived. The ground beneath their feet began to shake violently, and the walls of the chamber started to crack. Jack, Zara shouted over the rumbling. I think we're destabilizing the entire system. Jack nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the adapter. Just a few more seconds. We need enough power to break orbit. A deafening roar echoed through the chamber, and Zara's blood ran cold. The creature from outside had found its way in, and it was heading straight for them. Jack, we need to go. Now. Zara grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the structure just as the adapter's lights changed from blue to green, indicating a full charge. They ran, the sounds of destruction following close behind. Crystal shards rained down from the ceiling, and the passages twisted and reformed around them, as if the planet itself was trying to trap them. As they emerged from the complex, they saw that the situation above ground had deteriorated even further. The sky was now a chaotic swirl of energy storms, and the landscape was almost unrecognizable, dominated by towering crystal spires and deep chasms. They sprinted for the ship, the monstrous creature hot on their heels. Jack slammed the adapter into the ship's power systems as soon as they were aboard, and the engines roared to life with newfound energy. "Hold on," Jack yelled as he punched the throttle. The ship lurched upward, narrowly avoiding a swipe from the creature's massive claws. They shot into the sky, the ship groaning and shaking as it fought against the planet's chaotic energy fields. Zara gripped her seat tightly, her eyes wide as she watched the world below them grow smaller. The crystal structures were now spreading across the entire planet, reshaping it into something entirely alien. As they broke through the upper atmosphere, a massive energy wave rippled out from the planet's surface. The ship's systems flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, Zara thought they were going to lose power. But then the engines stabilized, and they were clear, the swirling chaos of Nexus 9 receding behind them. Jack let out a whoop of triumph, spinning in his chair to face Zara. "We did it. We actually did it." Zara smiled, relief washing over her. But as she looked back at the transformed planet through the viewscreen, she couldn't shake the feeling that their adventure was far from over. Whatever they had set in motion on Nexus 9, its effects would be felt across the galaxy for years to come. "So," she said, turning to Jack with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, "what do we do now?" Jack's grin widened, a spark of adventure in his eyes. Now we make sure the rest of the galaxy is ready for what's coming. Something tells me this is just the beginning." As the ship sped away from Nexus 9, carrying its unlikely pair of explorers towards an uncertain future, one thing was clear: the universe would never be the same again. Triumph of cooperation. The vastness of space stretched out before them, a stark contrast to the chaotic transformation they had just escaped. Jack's ship, pushed beyond its limits by the crystal energy, groaned and shuddered as it carried them further from Nexus 9. In the co-pilot's seat, Zara monitored the ship's systems, her slender fingers dancing across the holographic displays. "Jack," she said, her voice tight with concern, "the power core is destabilizing. We can't maintain this speed for long." Jack nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the navigation console. "We need to find a safe place to set down and make repairs. There's a small outpost on Karis Prime, about half a day's journey from here. If we can make it there." His words were cut short as a violent shudder ran through the ship. Warning lights flashed across the control panel, and a low, ominous hum filled the air. "We're losing containment on the crystal energy," Zora exclaimed, her heart's racing. "If it breaches the core, we'll be torn apart." Jack's jaw set in determination. "Not if I can help it. Zara, I need you to reroute all non-essential power to the containment field. I'm going to try something crazy." As Zara worked frantically to stabilize the ship's systems, Jack guided their craft towards a nearby asteroid field. The jagged rocks loomed before them, a deadly maze that no sane pilot would willingly enter. "Jack," Zara said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and terror, "please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking." A reckless grin spread across Jack's face. "The energy from the crystals is too unstable for normal space, but if we can disperse it gradually." Understanding dawned on Zara. The asteroids. Their gravitational fields could help dissipate the excess energy. "Exactly," Jack confirmed, "but it's going to be one hell of a ride. You might want to hold on to something." With that, he plunged the ship into the asteroid field. Massive rocks whizzed past them on all sides as Jack expertly maneuvered through the deadly obstacle course. Each near miss sent a pulse of energy from their overcharged core, the excess power bleeding off into the gravitational wells of the asteroids they passed. Zara watched in amazement as Jack guided them through the field, His reactions were incredibly fast, his movements precise. It was as if he could predict the movement of the asteroids before they happened. "How are you doing this?" she asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Jack's eyes never left the viewport as he responded. "It's something we humans call intuition. Sometimes you've got to stop thinking and just feel." As they wove through the asteroid field, the ship's systems slowly began to stabilize. The warning lights on the control panel dimmed one by one, and the ominous hum of the overtaxed power core faded away. Finally, after what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, they emerged on the other side of the field. Jack let out a whoop of triumph, spinning his chair to face Zora with a wide grin. "Now that," he said, "is how humans fly." Zora couldn't help but laugh, the tension of their escape giving way to giddy relief. "I must admit," she said, shaking her head in disbelief, "I'm beginning to understand why humans have such a reputation for beating impossible odds." As they set course for Keras Prime, Zara found herself reflecting on their incredible journey. From her desperate struggle for survival on Nexus 9 to the awakening of an ancient civilization and their harrowing escape, it all seemed like something out of a far-fetched adventure holo. "Jack," she said softly, "I owe you my life. When my own people abandoned me, you, a complete stranger from a species I had been taught to distrust, risked everything to save me." Jack's expression softened. "Hey, that's what humans do. We look out for each other, no matter where we come from." He paused, a thoughtful look crossing his face. "You know, Zara, you're not so bad yourself. That botanical knowledge of yours saved our skins more than once back there." Zara felt a warmth in her chest at his words. "I suppose we make quite the team," she said with a smile. As Keras Prime came into view, a small green and blue jewel against the backdrop of space, Jack's expression turned serious. "You realize what this means, don't you? What we discovered on Nexus 9. It's going to change everything." Zara nodded solemnly. "The awakening of the crystal beings, the transformation of an entire planet. The galaxy isn't prepared for something like this." "No," Jack agreed, "it isn't, which is why we need to make sure they're ready." He turned to Zara, determination shining in his eyes. "What do you say? Feel like sticking around for a while longer? I could use a brilliant Florian botanist on my crew." Zara felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect. The idea of returning to her old life after everything she had experienced seemed impossible. And if she were honest with herself, the thought of more adventures with this unpredictable human was undeniably appealing. "I'd be honored," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "Though I must warn you, I'm not sure the galaxy is ready for a human Florian team." Jack laughed, the sound filled with genuine joy. "Oh, I'm counting on that. We're going to shake things up, you and I, show everyone what can happen when different species work together." As they began their descent towards Keras Prime, Zara felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. She had set out on a simple botanical survey and ended up at the forefront of a galactic revolution. And beside her was Jack, a human who had shattered every preconception she had about his species. Together, they had survived the impossible. They had uncovered secrets that would reshape the known universe. And now, as they prepared to share their discovery with the galaxy, Zara knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning. The ship touched down on Keras Prime, the first step in a journey that would take them across the stars. As Jack powered down the engines, he turned to Zara with a mischievous glint in his eye. "So, partner," he said, "ready to change the galaxy?" Zara's response was a grin that matched his own. "Lead the way, Captain. The universe awaits." As they stepped out onto the soil of Keras Prime, the unlikely duo, a daring human explorer and a brilliant Florian botanist, stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their adventure on Nexus 9 had forged a bond between them, a partnership that transcended species and defied expectations. In that moment, as two distant suns set on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Zara realized that she had found something she never expected, a new home among the stars, and a friend who would stand by her side no matter what the universe threw their way. The galaxy was changing, and Jack and Zara would be at the forefront, showing everyone the true power of cooperation, trust, and the indomitable spirit of exploration that united them all.